Guys, today we're going to discuss the poems from pages 284 to 287. All right, the first poem, Landing of the Pilgrims' Fathers. So this is kind of told from when the Pilgrims first journeyed to the United States and some of the difficulties they faced. We can tell in the poem when it says stern and rock-bound coast, and I've put a picture here. The New England coast is very rocky, right? So imagine it says stormy skies, so they arrive, there's a lot of rocks, it's really stormy. It says heavy night hung dark, band of exiles, not as the conquerors come. So they're fleeing their original home countries because they're not allowed to worship God the way they want to. They are being forced to go to the King's Church, so they're looking for freedom, and they are moving to a new land. It's a very harsh place. There's not a grocery store they can go to. There's no houses, right? They have to start from scratch. They have to build everything themselves and grow all their food, things like that. And then when it says not as conquerors come, so there's nobody cheering them on, there's no trumpets, they're not going to be celebrated or rewarded, right? They're going on their own. So this seems really difficult. But what's their attitude? It says not as the flying come in silence and in fear. So they're not fleeing in fear, right? It says, with their hymns of lofty cheer, amidst the storm they sang. So even though things are really difficult, they're singing hymns, right? They're praising God. So they had really good attitudes even in a whole lot of trouble. And from history, we know that actually a lot of them died of sicknesses and things like that. But they were strong, they trusted God, and they had a great attitude. Okay, the end toward the end, the last stanza, it says, "Call it holy ground." This is an allusion or a reference back to Exodus 3:5. This is when Moses, he's watching the sheep in the wilderness and he sees this bush, and the bush is on fire, but it's not being consumed, right? It's on fire but not getting burned up. And he approaches the bush, and God talks to him out of the bush. And God tells him that this is holy ground and he needs to remove his shoes, right? So they're saying kind of this new home will be a place to worship God. Okay. And alliteration. Alliteration is when the author repeats the initial consonant sounds. So some examples, and it's usually like in the same one or two lines. So heavy hung hills, conquers come, came, storm sang, starts, sea sounding, white waves. So this just kind of gives an interesting sound to the poem. All right, and the next poem, we have Crossing the Plains. This poem is a little bit difficult to understand, but I have another picture for you. This poem is all about the pioneers, the people who first they made towns on the east coast of the United States. And eventually, when these had become cities, a lot of people wanted to move west to find new land. And again, it would have been a very harsh environment, sometimes woods, or there were Native Americans there that were often unfriendly, wild animals. So it was quite a dangerous journey, and it would have been very difficult to start a like new town, right? So they would go a bunch of them in these covered wagons pulled by oxen. So here they're describing the oxen that are pulling these covered wagons, right? So what great yoke brutes with briskets low, with wrinkled necks like buffalo, with round, brown, liquid, pleasing eyes that turned so slow and sad to see you, that shone like love's eyes soft with tears, that seemed to plead and make replies, the while they bowed their necks and drew the creaking load and looked at you. Their sable briskets swept the ground, their cloven feet kept solemn sound. So this is just giving the feeling of how the oxen might look as they're pulling these heavy loads across long distances. And one thing I want to point out, it talks about kings even in captivity, and this would be a paradox, right? This is a conflicting ideas, kings in captivity, right? But they just look so kingly, or the water buffalo, sometimes they look really beautiful and strong, they have really shiny fur, but like this, they would be used for work, right? All right, so some other things, some alliteration. There's a lot of alliteration in this poem. Brutes, briskets, buffalo, so slow, sad, sable, swept, solemn sounds, stolid, sense, stately stepped, stately, something still. So you can see there's the initial consonant repeated. Now assonance is similar, but this is the repeated vowel sounds instead of consonants. So some examples: their great eyes shining bright like wine. So you can hear that I sound repeated in that section. And then a repeated A sound, that had at. And then kings in captivity, another type of I sound. All right, and this poem, the rhythm, or a meter that has a regular pace, if you look at the lines, stolid since, stately stepped, stately trod, it kind of gives you the feeling of the slow plodding of the oxen, right? This is how they would step slow, one after another after another. So the author wants to give you that feeling of their slow pace over the land. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed these poems, and just let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.